this?
Oh, some dance team over in Chinatown.
Know him?
Oh, he's a retired ferry boat captain who does sand sculptures at the beach.
Oh, I know who that is. That's Rembrandt.
Do you ever read something so preposterous that it makes you want to tear your hair out? Well, recently I did read just such an article, and sadly it came from a major art publication. Edward Hopper, a very interesting, popular American artist. There is so much information available on him, a lot of good documentaries here on YouTube. And yet, a writer for a major art publication still gets one of his paintings wrong. In this video, I am going to dismantle his arguments and explain this painting, The Barber Shop, from the point of view of a master artist. So what would a master artist's perspective on this iconic American painting be? Watch this video and I will explain. Don't forget to click like on this video, share it with someone, subscribe to my channel, support me on Patreon, and visit my website to buy a painting. Let's begin. First, let's adjust the colors. The article uses an overly saturated image of this work. This is a better one. Before I pollute your mind with someone's descriptions and conclusions of this work, the ones I happen to strongly disagree with, I want you to form your own opinion about this work. It doesn't have to be a fully formed, beautifully written opinion. I just need you to think for yourself, pay attention to your personal, intuitive response to it. So take a look at this work, pause this video if necessary, and write down any nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs that you associate with this work. Don't overthink it. Jot down any words that come to mind and a couple of associations. I will do the same and we'll compare notes. Get set, go. Ready to compare notes? I asked some of my students to do the same. I didn't even tell them the title of this work, so as to get their true, intuitive responses. And here's some of what young artists said. First student: unnatural, grainy texture, blend colors, strange composition, makes no sense. Eyes go out of picture to the left up. Person, barber, off picture. Minimum detail, like a badly taken photo. Bad angles. The pole outside holds interest. Uninteresting overall. Uncanny. Abysmal. Lots of technical issues. Hard to tell it's barbershop. Woman working. Dull hands and face. Empty space. Vacuous. Staircase curlicues are distracting. Black outside, only a bit of sky, greenish shadows. Another student: modern, propaganda, communist-like, laboratory, work, secretary, green, white, Cuba or South African colony or South American colony, and Old Movies Association. Another student: content, study. Another student: assistant, work, doctor, studying, quiet, focused, bright room. Another student: dreamlike, fuzzy, memory, cold, empty. And here's what I got. Strong center light, all around darkness. Woman, artificial, work, uniform, attention, interested, disinterested, timidly, small, hiding, stark contrasts, drab colors, clock, time, half and half, diagonals, verticals, busy lower half, empty upper half, busy barber. I formed associations. Quiet time between customers, neither here nor there, and a question in my mind arose, what does future hold? Now we see certain tendencies. Without knowing the context and the title of the work, most students pick up on the fact that the painting shows focusing on studies or work of some kind. Some sense the artificially sterile environment, which shows in words like laboratory, doctor, unnatural, cold, and bright light. Remember that a while back, small-town barbers used to perform simple medical aid tasks, and thus the doctor-to-barber association is appropriate. Some pick up on emptiness and quiet, or lack of sounds. One student even sensed the technical issues, unable to make sense of the design and drafting aspects of the work. The overall effect of the work is leaning toward the negative end of the spectrum. This quick overview gives us the overall setting and presents questions. Why does this work have a negative connotation? What is the woman studying? Why are there technical issues with drafting? I will help you find answers to these questions, but first, let's see what the author says. The article is titled Peeking Through the Window of Iconic America, published by Inside Art. The article begins with a quote. With a certain slant of early morning light, Edward Hopper captured the anxious stillness of 20th century American life. The author continues. Hopper's paintings feel like they are about what isn't there as much as what is. He talks about the direction of light, that it is reminiscent of religious paintings or a spotlight on the stage, except that this painting lacks the divine redeemer or staged drama. The subjects aren't saints or apostles, and there is no divine redemption, quite the opposite. It is mundane, material reality. We learn of the theme of temporality via the diagonal shadow. For the interior, the author uses descriptors like blank, featureless wall, deadly quiet, odd sense, time crawling, time standing still. He adds a negative, not a shared enriching experience. And he adds a devaluing labels like just a stop, a forgettable place between places, vacuous but necessary and functional. For the barber, the author uses descriptors like non-entity. Face reflection is nothing but a blur. And for the woman, a negative descriptor, absent expression of the wife, boredom, lacks of interest in barbershop activities. The author concludes that she might be a bored wife of a man in the barber's chair, and their life together is empty and uninteresting. In that the artist is showing us the alternate reality of small-town America, the one that is filled with loneliness, isolation, and stagnation below the surface. The author also concludes that the artist didn't do this deliberately, but rather painted the work the way he felt it. He justifies his conclusions because Hopper liked quoting Goethe in describing his work process. The reproduction of the world that surrounds me by means of the world that is in me. So for the author, this means Hopper didn't create his work in this way deliberately. I can't disagree more. You can read the whole article online. Just Google it. Now, let's look at this work through the eyes of a master artist. First, let's ask ourselves, who or what is this painting about? If we take a look at what is in the center of the painting, we see that the woman is sitting down prominently in the lower part of the center of the painting. She seems to be the main attraction. Everything revolves around her in a way. If we zoom out, or in the museum we would stand way back from this painting, we would see that even from a far distance, her silhouette is prominently showing against that very bright wall behind her. Look how the darker upper right and the lower left corners form a window through which we see the bright light and the woman's silhouette. So this painting is definitely about this woman. It seems that she works there, but what kind of work? She's wearing a uniform. This is not your usual dress. It just looks too prim and proper. So let's think about it. What kind of work would a woman in uniform do in a barber shop, where only men go for shaves and haircuts? Give it a few seconds. Did you guess it? Here's a little clue.
You need a manicure.
So I do.
This isn't your first manicure by any chance, is it?
No, it isn't.
Well, look, if you think I ought to have Ether, don't be afraid to say so.
Honestly, I've only cut someone once before.
Ah, then I'm your second manicure.
That's kind of cute, isn't it? In the 1930s, when men were supposedly so manly and girls so girly, men got pampered in barber shops with shave, hairstyling, manicures, and even clear nail polish. This also explains why she is sitting at a table which has handles, a bowl, and some long tools. Her chair doesn't allow her to recline. She is ready to jump up and move her table and chair to the customer, perhaps the very one who is getting a shave right now. But wait, didn't the author conclude she was a bored wife in an uninteresting relationship? According to him, these two need marriage counseling. The author also said, whatever her relationship to the others, for her it is a boring moment in a tedious life filled with boring moments.
Okay, Danny boy.
I don't like that whatever. We have the setting, the mood, the narrative begins to unfold. There is no room for whatevers. It's like saying whatever the relationship of Romeo to Juliet was, theirs was just another failed life story. Why create a painting about a manicurist in a barber shop, especially if it's just another bored woman? To point out the boredom? Obviously, there is more to the work than this. The answer to this question is the key to unlock the meaning of this work. And it is not about the stagnation and loneliness in America, although it is a part of this work. It is too broad and non-specific to be applied as a description of this work. It is not about the barber shop and its place in a small town either. And this is no small-town barbershop. This is a big city, an upscale barbershop. Rich customers frequent this place, while outside of it, the Great Depression is in full swing. The barbershop is the setting. The story is about this one young woman who works as a manicurist, and the loneliness is much more personal. And maybe it is not loneliness, but daydreaming. To begin to understand this painting, we need to take into account the fact that Hopper's wife, Jo Nivison, absolutely insisted that she posed for him in all his paintings since the day they were married. Both were in their 40s at the time. They didn't have what we today would call exactly a healthy relationship. She was an artist painter as well, and apparently Hopper devalued her work. She in turn often lost her temper, but she was always an ardent supporter of his work. Hopper's paintings began to sell only after they got married, and the credit for it to a large degree goes to his wife, Jo. In part, this may explain the doll-like artificial features of the manicurist. It is not that Hopper couldn't capture the likeness of the individual woman, but perhaps he didn't want to capture the likeness of his aging wife in what should be a young woman manicurist. But making her look like a doll and portray these non-specific features means many viewers can easily associate with the main dynamic of this narrative. Hopper worked as an illustrator prior to becoming a full-time painter. He didn't like being an illustrator, but he was a good illustrator. He knew how to tell a story in one visual. His contemporaries were such great illustrators as Andrew Loomis, Norman Rockwell, and J.C. Leyendecker. While Rockwell enjoyed being an illustrator, Hopper's introverted, grumpy personality wasn't well suited for the illustration world. He didn't like to work on demand and often got painter's blocks. By the time he created this painting, he was nearly 50 years old. He knew exactly what he was doing. He is known for meticulously planing his paintings and doing many sketches before the final canvases come to light. Hopper really understood that he was looking at the world through his personal lens, and he saw the world no one else sees. But despite his efforts to make this world a visible reality for all of us, some apparently still don't see it. Let's go back to the barber shop. What do we know so far? The big city. It is suggested by the dark silhouettes of the skyscrapers in the window. This is definitely an upscale barber shop. Look at the plentiful space, the heavy ornate railing. There must be rich male customers. Here's one, and he isn't important as a person. Isn't that funny? Would a rich man see his manicurist as a unique individual? The artist had turned the tables. Now the rich man isn't seen as anything but a suggestion. Hopper is inviting us to see her, the manicurist, but he is not showing her as a unique individual either. What else do we have? The Great Depression is on. Maybe that's why, despite the strong light coming from the window, Hopper shows it as one of the darkest elements in this composition. Instead of pushing it back, giving it a haze with aerial perspective, he makes sure we notice the darkness. Then there is the barber. Despite his white coat, he blends with the upper right shadow, and his dark red pants seem to be a necessary design element that stops the eye from exiting the painting and helps ground the bottom right corner. The mirror reflects not only vague, faceless head of the barber, but the darkness of the barber shop interior. Despite the strong light, the rest of the interior is rather dark. And you know what? That's where we, the viewers, and the artist are standing. We are looking from within a dark portion of the barber shop into a strongly lit one. And that brings us back to the manicurist. The light is shining on her and is for her. Its purpose is for us to see her, to pay attention to her. The composition is structured in such a way that the only way out for her is through the upper left, toward the light, past the colorful pole, and into that small patch of blue sky. So since I touched on the composition, let's go into the technical aspects of the design. A master artist never looks just at what's within the painting. A master artist automatically in their mind projects every element within the painting past the painting, as if it was another step closer to the window and you are seeing beyond the current edges. It is another world out there, and all of that world has to make sense. Everything has to come together, what you see within the window of the painting and what's beyond it. And the first thing that jumps out at me is how enormous that window is. And how do I know it is enormous? Because if that shadow on the wall is for real, then we project the line past the painting into that additional space, and we find its connection with the edge of the window. So somewhere in this area, the window is ending, and the light's passing through it, casting that shadow on the wall. The next step is perspective lines. Since the staircase is very close to us in the foreground, it is very easy to project those lines into the distance and find the vanishing points. And that's your eye level. If we only focus on the steps in the foreground, we feel like we're standing a bit high and looking down into the barber shop, as if we not yet stepped all the way down to the floor level. Interesting that the clock on the wall is positioned right on that eye level. So as we as viewers walk into the painting via the steps, we are looking straight at this clock and noticing the time. And the time is 1 p.m. Lunch is over, everybody is back to work. But if we take a look at the curtain rod in the window and a couple of other elements in the window, we will see that those don't line up with the steps perspective. And they give us a new vanishing point with a new eye level. How can this be? Then there is the manicurist's little table. It has perspective lines that go to yet another vanishing point with another eye level. Is this a mistake, or is this another proof that artists break the rules in art all the time, and all that matters is that you create a great painting? Neither one. What I think Hopper is doing is inviting us into the painting step by step. And we are stepping down the staircase and arriving on the same floor with the manicurist. This is not a mistake, and he is not breaking rules, because each of the elements, the staircase, the window, and the manicurist table, are all drawn according to the linear perspective. But each one of those elements have their own layer. Like layers of the cake, this eye level keeps getting lower until we get to the eye level of the manicurist. And now think about that lowest eye level. It lines up with the face of the manicurist. And that means what? It means that we are sitting down as well to be able to observe her at this angle. You see how incredibly clever Hopper is with his design. He doesn't ignore the rules of perspective, but he makes them work for exactly the feeling he wants us to feel. Stepping down, getting lower, and onto the same level with the main character of the story. Now, if we project the window all the way up to form that shadow on the wall, we can see that the window is completely unrealistically tall. There is no way a semi-basement barber shop, which comes down from the street level, would have a window with the ceiling this tall. You see how the precision that comes with realism is not exactly important to Hopper in this work. He takes each feature and uses it as a design element to suit the narrative. And for that, he has to tweak the proportions of those features. Projecting the rest of the figure of the barber, lining it up with the railing, you can see how the proportions of the railing are not realistic either. The curlicues, their sizes, they diminish as they get lower. And if you compare it to the barber's legs, you will see that even the tallest railing is too short to be safe and the proper proportion to the body. Now that we stepped down and into the painting on the same eye level with the manicurist, sort of up close and personal, we can start seeing her as a person. Who is she? She is ready to jump up and do her job, yes, and during the Great Depression, everybody would hold on to their jobs for dear life, because without the job, you were on the street. She is absorbed in that magazine. She is not wasting time. And that's why I say perhaps she is daydreaming. It is not so much the loneliness, although she seems to be alone in the barber shop, the only young woman constantly surrounded by men, and probably powerful and wealthy men. She is not in the same class as them, and probably is not seen by them. And perhaps what Hopper is showing us is how they see her. But we know better. She is a young woman who is absorbed in what is presented in the magazine. Perhaps it's the latest fashion, something about the celebrities, or the latest romantic movies. She perhaps is dreaming about a life like that. Is it possible for her? After all, she is dealing with wealthy customers all the time. That world of celebrity and wealth seems to be within her grasp. But for now, she is still but a manicurist in the uniform that is not even seen as a unique individual. Her pose, that is her body language, suggests a kind of timidity, like she is small and hiding. She is not sitting straight and proud. She is absorbed in the magazine, and she is also hiding, as if she is trying to hide away from the reality of the barbershop and be in her small, happy, cozy place. While she is very interested in what's going on in the magazine, her attention is all there. She is completely disinterested in what's going on in the rest of the barbershop. Her body language suggests a kind of timidity, like she is trying to be small and hide. The very stark contrasts and drab colors only suggest more of the sadness about the whole thing. The clock on the wall suggests the passing of time, and that shadow that slices through the clock basically tells us that half of the time has already passed and gone, half of the time is still coming, and the future might be bright after all. The diagonally oriented shadows on the wall and that railing help us feel that the light is streaming from that upper left corner into the room and toward the manicurist. That light on the wall is interrupted by a very vertical, thick line. That's another shadow. Actually, this is a completely artificial shadow. It doesn't seem to be cast by any other object in the painting, and therefore it's another design element. Hopper is simply taking something that would look like it could be a cast shadow from something, placing it there because he needs to interrupt that very big blank wall with a lot of light on it. Now that he interrupted it with that stripe, you can see how the clock to the right of it actually starts to make sense in a very abstract design type of way. It balances out the circle that's created by the head of the manicurist and the circle that is the clock. They form almost a vertical connection between the two, and that artificial shadow to the left of them offsets them nicely. Rhythmically, it connects the whole painting. From the manicurist to the left, you get these verticals of that artificial shadow, the window, the wall, ending the painting on the left. And to the right of the manicurist, you get the verticals of the mirror and the body of the barber. Everything gets rhythmically connected throughout the painting. And what about that barber's reflection in the mirror? Obviously, Hopper is telling us that to him, this barber is just a barber. He is not a specific person. But I guess he also doesn't want us to think of him as a specific person. For the composition of this painting and for the main narrative, he is a lot less important. That's why his whole body practically is in the shadow, and there is very little bit light on the back bottom portion of his body. He is absorbed in the work he is doing, and his personality is not showing through. I don't think all is lost in this painting. Things are not as dismal as they may seem. After all, that strong warm light is coming from that upper left portion of the painting. And there is that colorful blue pole there and a patch of blue sky. Those are the signs of hope. Imagine if the manicurist put down her magazine and turned her head toward that spot. The whole painting would suddenly change into one that is a lot more hopeful. In conclusion, I would summarize Hopper's work this way. At the height of the Great Depression, in a dark, towering city, there lived a young woman. She humbly got a job as a manicurist in an upscale barber shop, for it kept her fed with a roof over her head. But in her mind's quiet moments, she didn't stop dreaming and hoping for a better life, for something was calling her to spread her wings and fly. Did I cover absolutely everything? Obviously no. Like a good teacher, I left a few elements for you to discover on your own. For instance, the equilateral triangle formed by the heads of the manicurist, the barber, and the clock, and the fact that they are placed on the three main eye levels. What possible meaning is there? And the clock and the shadow across it. What are they telling us about the future and the past? And do you see an obvious giveaway why the only artistically logical way for the manicurist is to go up to the left or fly toward the blue sky? And the last one, the colorful pole outside the window. Where are its colors echoed within the barber shop interior? And what can this possibly mean? If you get this ones right, you get A+, and you are on your way to becoming a master artist. If you want to see my answers to these questions, support me on Patreon and see this video in its entirety. Only after finding answers to all these questions will you begin to understand that Hopper, like the great masters of old, is very clever with his design. In one visual image, he uses linear perspective and values to create design elements that represent movement for the viewer as well as the subject of the painting. And now let's take another look at Hopper's favorite quote by Goethe: "The reproduction of the world that surrounds me by means of the world that is in me." In this work, in my opinion, Edward Hopper represented reality how he saw it. While his contemporary, such as Rockwell, created an image of America as it ought to be, mostly dignified and at times comical, Hopper showed us his America, full of stark contrasts between light and darkness, despair and hope. Spotlight on a timidly small but hope-filled manicurist in a dark pit of a barber shop, further surrounded by a dark, cold, big city. And he did that deliberately. He planned that ahead of time. He knew exactly what he was doing, painting, and telling us.